Hello everybody, it is March 28th, 2018, and I want to share with you today some information about Empyrean 1st edition, which is a role-playing game guidebook that I am publishing here in just a week or so in the month of April. So before I start, I wanted to cover just a couple of things to give people kind of an idea and a taste about what this project means to me, what it's about, and to give you a little bit of a preview about some of the key components to the game itself, to the guide. So the first thing is the general concept of the game and its design. So I've been doing role-playing games for a very long time, for many years, and I have tried many different versions of many different things that are out there, and I've also spent a lot of time kind of designing and playing my own with some of my friends. And so Empyrean takes this concept of the self-designed and takes it really to its natural conclusion, which is a fully designed game. And the thing that makes this different, makes Empyrean different from other games, is that Empyrean tries to establish some basic general rules and concepts, and then uses those same rules and concepts throughout the entirety of the world of Empyrean and throughout the game itself to try to create a consistent experience that's enjoyable but still really, really flexible. One of the things that I've noticed that can be really difficult for players with some of these larger games that have been around for a long time, like Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder, is that those books attempt to answer every question about everything that could possibly come up, down to things as small as like the weight that your character is carrying. So you're adding up grams or whatever of units of items and whether or not your character can carry those things. To me, as a player and as a narrator, that distracts from the game itself because now you're just focusing on mechanics. So in order to combat that, Empyrean utilizes a system of kind of generic rules and concepts, and then again applies them consistently. One of the things that you'll find in the guidebook is a bunch of samples. So throughout the whole book, throughout the whole manual, examples are given and samples are given of different scenarios that might arise and how you would then apply those concepts and rules to help manage that situation within the game. The overall concept is to not distract from gameplay. So the narrator is telling a story and the players are participating, they're playing that story. And so we have to keep in mind that it's a game and it's also a narrative, so it's a story. And we want to keep those two things constantly moving forward, constantly moving along. And when we get bogged down in rules and numbers and nitpicking things, it takes a lot of that enjoyment out for the players and for the narrator, I feel. And so Empyrean, again, attempts to remedy that with a different kind of free-form approach. The other concept that I want to talk about today is traits. And this is used in a very wide way. So traits in this game refers to really one of three different things. You can think of them in three ways. Passive traits, which are the things about the character that make them awesome, but don't require them to actively use or are not epic. And I'll talk about epic feats in maybe a different video or later. But the characters' passive traits are the things, the skills that make them unique, or their inherent abilities that make them unique and make them awesome. For example, Dragon-Blooded, which is one of the classes, is fireproof. They cannot be burned. They cannot be harmed by fire. It's one of their inherent powers that they have. Because they carry the dragon's heart, they have dragon magic, so they're immune to fire. And that's a passive trait because it's inherent to who they are. Active traits are the abilities that the character has to intentionally use. So if we're talking about Dragon-Blooded, still that would be breathing fire or controlling fire through pyromancy. There's a whole slew of active traits throughout the different classes. And then lastly, you have defects, which are negative traits. They're bad traits. And they help the player to define their character and who their character's personality, but also presents obstacles for them to have to overcome. So, for instance, a character could be infamous. They might also have an addiction to alcohol. thinking rum, maybe they're a pirate. They could be volatile, maybe they're a hothead. And all sorts of different examples and possibilities are given throughout the guidebook in the different sections. But players are also capable of creating and designing their own traits. And the reason the trait system is so important is that instead of having skills and abilities and inherent traits and passive traits all be different things, all of these things fall under the same category. They're all traits. They're all something that's attributed to that character. It makes the system a lot simpler than some of the others. Also, every character starts with the same amount of health and the same amount of epic feats, which again, I still haven't delved into. The last thing that I'm going to talk about on this video, though, is Persuasion. So the game has two major combat systems, if you will. So combat, of course, being physical, melee, or long-range combat, which is addressed within the guidebook, the manual of how combat plays out. And it is much simpler than in some of these other systems. It does still use dice for a bit of a random factor, but ensures that a character who is using a weapon that they are proficient in will always be doing at least a minimum amount of damage whenever they attack. I do personally take a little bit of a note that I have about other games is what we call these oopsies, right, or these oopses, where a character who has been training their entire life with a particular weapon is in the middle of combat and somehow completely misses their target and manages to, like, stab their ally or themselves. Like, no trained proficient fighter would ever make that kind of a huge snafu, like a huge gaffe like that. So that's just, you know, it's kind of silly and ridiculous, and this addresses that to say, no, a character who's proficient should be doing well in combat. Like a trained combatant should be doing well in combat. We shouldn't penalize our players because they're not good at rolling dice, so they have bad luck with dice rolls. But Persuasion acts as a kind of form of social combat. So a big part of this game is how do you use this often neglected part of the story. So real narratives, actual novels, right, dialogue and social interaction is a huge component, but in RPGs, they often kind of, that gets minimized, they're kind of ignored, and the focus tends to be on physical combat. Well, you may have characters and players who want to use other means to accomplish their goals. They don't just want to have to beat their way to success. So they may be looking for other options. And this adds another dimension to the game that allows people to say, what if I can successfully convince this other character or NPC to do such and such for me to accomplish my goals? And it allows for a huge variety of possibilities and options within the game. A lot of different things can happen. But again, the system is in place so that the players can enjoy, the characters can enjoy making these attempted persuasions. And it adds a level of intensity and interest to the social aspect of the game. So it is not purely just a questing or dungeon delving game. It can function as a social game as well. And so I think that that's really important. And I will just mention epic feats briefly because I've said it a few times now. The concept of epic feats is actually very important because another thing that I've always found strange is that characters should not have to expend energy or mana or magic or MP or whatever it may be in that particular system in order to perform skills that they're highly proficient in, that happen all of the time, that are regular or mundane to them. If you're a trained swordsman, regular combat with a sword should not be exhausting you, not in any particularly noticeable way. You shouldn't forget, right, how to do spells. Like, that, to me, does not make sense. So, instead, Empyrean employs what I call the epic feat system, and it allows our players to be, with their characters, super awesome. Any regular use of skills, riding, combat, using stars for navigation, these normal, regular use of skills do not deplete the character's epic feat. So every character has a set number of epic feats that they have, and they can restore a few every day. But anytime they need to use one of their skills that is more legendary or more tremendous, they have to expend epic feats. And so they're limited in the number of epic feats they can do per day. But again, they can restore some naturally over time. The reason that this is important is because it gives the characters an opportunity to be heroes. It gives them an opportunity to be heroic, to be legendary, to be extraordinary. And that doesn't have to be in a positive sense. It gives them an opportunity also to be nefarious or to be truly cruel. But it gives them an opportunity to do things that are remarkable simply by expending those feats and using their related traits. And that system, again, is consistent throughout the whole game and throughout the whole manual. So characters are supposed to be legendary. Characters are supposed to be awesome. I never want a player to have a character who is struggling to kill a rat, or who's struggling to kill, some very, very low-level minor thing at the very beginning of the game and having to, slowly grind their way up a level. Your character is awesome. Your character is the main character. They are the protagonist or anti-hero of your story, and so they deserve to be awesome from the very beginning, and epic feats allow you to accomplish that. The other thing is that depending on how you spend those feats throughout the story is going to have an impact on your type of character. So if you're a character who focuses on combat, you're going to use your epic feats more often in combat, and you're going to be a really kick-ass fighter. If your character is one who prefers to use their social skills or to use stealth, you're going to expend your feats in that way, and you're going to become more of a diplomat or more of an assassin. And so that's important. And then lastly, I want to mention narration and rewards. There's a whole section in the guide dedicated to helping the narrator understand these concepts and rules and how to apply them consistently throughout the game, and to benefit the players, because a well-trained narrator is the biggest benefit to players, but also rewarding characters. There is no prescribed way specifically to reward your players and their characters as they progress through their story. Instead, there is a list of possible options that you can use to reward your characters and their players for successful campaigns or for successful campaign sessions. And again, this is covered in the guidebook, but advancing your character should always be relevant to what they're doing. So instead of having a character who is level 1 suddenly becomes level 2 and has all these new skills, and where did they come from? How did they suddenly learn how to do all of these things? The skill system in this is far more relevant to the character themselves and how the player is using their character. So again, if they're focusing on certain skills or developing certain skills, those are the skills that get rewarded. And that helps people to develop their character because what they're doing within the story has a direct impact on their character moving forward. So again, Empyrean First Edition Guidebook is coming out in April 2018, so here just in a couple weeks. I really hope you guys will check it out. If you have any questions, please post them below. Feel free to like and share this video, and I look forward to speaking with all of you again very soon.